Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at this really interesting piece from cognitive market research. It's called The Value of Audio Branding's Sonos Acquisition of Snips for Smarter Voice Integration.
That's right. We're focusing on a specific move back in 2019. Sonos, everyone knows them. For speakers, they acquired a French AI startup called Snips.
And what we want to do is really get into the why behind it. The strategy. It cost $37.5 million, so it wasn't small change. How does it connect things like audio branding, voice tech, privacy, which is huge now, and Sonos's plans for global markets, especially emerging ones?
Yeah, it really makes you think, doesn't it? How does a company known for, speakers and sound quality suddenly make this big bet on voice AI? And this article suggests privacy was, well, a major part of that equation.
Okay, let's dig in then. The article starts with the basics. Sonos bought Snips 2019.
Yep, for that 37.5 million US dollars. And Snips, they were based in Paris, specializing in voice AI.
So what was special about Snips? Why them? What was their, unique selling point technologically?
Right, this is key. The article highlights that Snips focused on what's called edge-based voice AI.
Edge-based.
I don't
Okay, sounds a bit technical. Can you break that down? What's the edge mean here?
Think of edge as right there on the actual device, your speaker in this case. Snips tech meant voice commands get processed locally.
Locally. So on the speaker itself, in my house,
Exactly.
not sent off somewhere else.
Yeah.
How's that different from, say, Alexa or Google Assistant? Those are the ones most people know.
It's fundamentally different, actually. Most of those big assistants, they need the internet constantly. They send your voice recording up to the cloud, to, massive external servers to figure out what you said.
Okay.
Snips was designed to skip that whole trip.
Got it. Processing locally on the edge. So what are the immediate upsides of doing it that way, according to the source?
Well, a couple of big ones. First, responsiveness. Commands can feel faster because the data doesn't have to travel far.
Makes sense. Quicker reaction.
Yeah. And the other thing the article mentions is reliability.
Reliability. Why is that such a big deal?
Because it means the system can still work, even if your internet connection is, let's say, a bit flaky or drops out completely for a moment.
Yeah. Right?
You could still potentially tell your speaker to change the volume or skip a track, even if your Wi-Fi is down, because the command is handled right there.
Okay. And that reliability, that local processing,
Yeah.
it seems like that connects straight to what the source says is a major driver. Privacy, data security.
Absolutely. That's a huge point in the article. If your voice data stays on the device, it's not being constantly shipped off somewhere else, not stored on, some third-party server.
Right.
And that directly tackles those growing concerns people have about who's listening, where their data is going. The article suggests this really helped position Sonos differently, maybe as more privacy conscious.
So it feels like this wasn't just Sonos bolting on a new feature. The source makes it sound much more strategic, like fundamental to their brand.
Exactly right. It wasn't just about the tech specs. The article frames it as a strategic move to really deepen the Sonos brand identity, specifically using audio and voice.
And that's where audio branding fits in, using sound as part of the brand itself.
Precisely. Audio branding is all about using sound strategically. Think signature sounds, the voice of an assistant, to reinforce what your brand is about. And the article argues that voice interaction, especially in smart speakers, is becoming the brand's personality. It's how you primarily interact.
So by owning Snips, Sonos got to control that personality completely.
That's a critical point from the source, yeah. Acquiring Snips gave Sonos total ownership of that voice layer.
Which means freedom from relying on the big guys like Amazon or Google.
Huge freedom. They weren't just plugging in Alexa or Google Assistant anymore, whose main goal, arguably, is often to collect data and pull you deeper into their own ecosystems, right?
Right. So having their own voice assistant built on Snips, what could Sonos focus it on doing?
Well, because it was theirs, they could tailor it very specifically. The Sonos voice assistant was designed, according to the article, just for controlling music, audio playback, volume, that kind of thing.
Not for ordering pizza or checking the weather.
Exactly. It wasn't trying to be a general-purpose assistant. It didn't need to integrate thousands of third-party skills.
It was focused. Do the core Sonos job, controlling music, but do it really well with voice.
That's the idea presented, to make listening on Sonos easier and more elegant, as the article puts it.
Now, another really interesting angle in the article is how this strategy plays out globally, especially in what are called emerging markets. Why is this edge-based, privacy-first approach potentially more important there?
Yeah, this is where those benefits like reliability and privacy kind of take on a new significance. The article points out that in places like, say, Southeast Asia, Latin America, parts of Eastern Europe, the internet infrastructure might not be as consistently robust.
Right.
And at the same time, people everywhere, including those regions, are becoming much more aware and concerned about their data privacy.
So being able to work offline, or at least with patchy internet, that becomes a genuine selling point.
Definitely. If your internet is unreliable, or if mobile data is expensive, which it can be in many places, having voice control that still functions locally is a big plus. The article even gives examples, like someone in South Africa or Indonesia being able to adjust volume, even if their network's temporarily down.
That makes a lot of sense. And did the source mention anything about local languages or accents?
It did touch on that. Because the processing is local, there's potential down the line to better adapt the system for regional accents and maybe even languages more effectively than a purely cloud-based system might. It could improve the experience in diverse markets.
So if we zoom out a bit, how does this all fit into Sonos's bigger picture, their long-term brand strategy?
Well, the article suggests Sonos sees itself as more than just speakers. They're aiming to be an experience-driven audio technology brand.
And controlling the voice interaction is a key part of crafting that whole experience.
It seems so. Owning that voice layer means they can manage the entire interaction, from the command you give to the sound quality you hear. It's about controlling the whole ecosystem.
And the idea is that this kind of holistic control builds loyalty.
That's the implication. If every touch point, including voice, reflects Sonos's core values, simplicity, quality, and now privacy and trust, it creates a more unified, potentially more trustworthy experience. Users might stick with that.
The article also brings up future-proofing, especially around AI ethics and regulations.
hmm
Mentions growing awareness in emerging markets, too.
Right. This privacy by design approach, using local processing, gives Sonos a potential edge. As people become more aware of surveillance capitalism or AI ethics, Sonos can position itself as a more user-respecting choice, maybe more ethical compared to systems constantly sending data to the cloud.
Which could appeal to people who want smart tech, but are wary of giving up too much data control.
Exactly. And then there's the regulatory side. The world's getting more complex with data protection laws, rules about where data has to be stored, restrictions on sending data across borders.
Like GDPR, but also things happening places like India or Brazil.
Precisely. The article mentions those countries specifically, where regulators are really focused on data localization and privacy. Designing for offline capability and keeping data local makes Sonos potentially less vulnerable to these shifting rules.
So the Snips acquisition looks like it was hitting multiple targets at once: tech, brand, market strategy, and even anticipating future regulations.
That's the picture the article paints, yes. It was a way to strengthen their identity, lean into their audio quality and user experience strengths, while also tackling head-on these growing concerns about privacy and connectivity differences around the world.
Okay, just to quickly nail down those key facts from the source again.
Sure. Snips, Paris-based, known for offline, edge AI. Sonos bought them in 2019. Price was $37.5 million. And the tech powers Sonos' own voice assistant, focused only on music control, emphasizing privacy and that premium sound experience.
Right, so putting it all together from this article, the Snips deal wasn't just, hey, let's add voice. It seems like it was this really thought-out, multi-layered strategic move, driven by a real commitment to privacy, wanting independence from big tech, and recognizing that this edge AI approach could offer big advantages, especially in global markets where internet might be iffy or privacy concerns are really rising.
Yeah, it shows a company trying to carve out its own path in the smart home future, betting on a more specialized function and building user trust as key differentiators.
It definitely does. Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. As we all become more conscious of our data and as global internet access remains uneven, could we see more tech moving in this direction? Towards specialized, privacy-first, on-device AI like Sonos did with Snips. Could that start to chip away at the dominance of the big, general-purpose cloud assistants for certain tasks?
It's a really compelling question that flows directly from what this source suggests, isn't it?
Something to think about. Okay, that wraps up this deep dive.